welcome to the deep dive. Today, you and I are heading out, virtually at least, to the sands of Egypt. We're going to explore the ancient city of Oxyrhynchus.
That's right, modern El Banasa.
Exactly. And our mission, well, it's to kind of dig beneath the surface, literally, and uncover some incredible stories from its really long history.
And we're focusing particularly on the Saite Period tombs based on some recent discoveries and a presentation.
Yes, we're using insights from that YouTube presentation, El Passat Millenari d'Occident,
Yeah.
Les Tombes Saite Omnuria Castellano. It's our guide for this exploration.
And it's a great source, really gives you a window into the ongoing work there. The finds are just constantly adding new layers to what we know about this really significant place.
Okay, so Oxyrhynchus, it wasn't just some quiet spot in the desert, was it?
Oh, definitely not. It was very strategically located.
Right on that navigable branch of the Nile, the Bar Yusuf.
Exactly. That made it a proper hub for trade. It had 3 ancient ports, apparently.
3 ports. And get this, it was also a key point for desert caravans. Like, just 3 days by camel from oases like Baharia.
You can just picture the goods flowing in, flowing out, being redistributed northwards. It really explains a lot.
In this location, it wasn't just about trade, right? It boosted its importance in other ways, too.
Absolutely. Beyond the economics, it had real political clout. It was the capital of the 19th nome of Upper Egypt.
A nome being like a province, basically, an administrative area.
Precisely. A key administrative division. And then there's the religious side. It had a major sanctuary to Osiris.
Which is a whole other topic we'll get into later with Dr. Mate Mascord, I believe.
Yes, her work focuses more on that aspect, but it definitely added to the city's status.
Even the name itself tells a story, doesn't it? Permejed in the pharaonic period.
Meaning a place or house of the Medjay?
The Medjay. Those were Nubian mercenaries patrolling the desert.
That's the idea. And the evidence, hieroglyphs, papyri, it all suggests a significant Nubian population there. Later, you see this shorter form, PMG. Maybe simplification or corruption.
Then fast forward to the Greek period, after Alexander.
It becomes Oxyrhynchus polis, named after the Oxyrhynchus fish.
Which ties back to Osiris again, right?
Yeah.
The first led some connection to his myth.
It did, yes. Underscoring that religious importance again. And by this time, it's really grown into a major city, a metropolis.
And the Romans, they certainly saw its value, called it the glorious and most illustrious city. That's quite a title.
It really is. And it even hosted Capitoline Games.
Like their version of the Olympics.
Pretty much, yeah. That really cemented it as one of the, 5 most important cities in Roman Egypt.
Incredible. So it just kept being important through different empires.
It seemed to manage that, yes. Even in the Byzantine period, it gets renamed PMG again, and it becomes this hub of monasteries and churches.
And there's that tradition about the Holy Family visiting the Tree of Mary.
A local tradition holds. They rested there, and water miraculously sprang up. It speaks to its enduring spiritual significance.
What an amazing timeline. And even later, a battle site during the Arab invasion. A key point for accessing the South.
So you can see why it still draws people today. Christians, Muslims, and of course, archaeologists like us.
But piecing all that history together on the ground must be incredibly challenging.
Oh, absolutely. The continuous occupation is the main thing. Modern buildings, modern life, it's all right on top of the ancient layers.
So even though we have those amazing papyri finds telling us about daily life, street names, people's details,
Which are incredible, giving us unparalleled detail.
the actual visible structures in the main city are limited.
Exactly. That's why the necropolis, the cemetery area outside the city walls, is where so much of the physical discovery happens. It was used for over 1,000 years.
1,000 years of burials. Wow. And our focus today is on the older tombs there, the Saite ones.
Yes, the Saite period. That's relatively late in pharaonic history, sort of 650 to 525 BC, just before the Greeks really arrive in force.
And this necropolis is not just tombs, is it? It's a big area.
Right. It also contained monastic areas and that big temple of Osiris we mentioned. The archaeologists divide it into sectors, for research, Sector 1, Sector 2, and so on.
Now, the current mission, the University of Barcelona one, they weren't the very first to find tombs here.
No, that's right. Discoveries actually started back in 1984. Before this mission.
What happened then?
Antiquities started showing up on the market, which tipped off the Egyptian Antiquities Service. They investigated, found the first tombs, and started numbering them.
And the current team just continued that numbering.
Yes, they're up to around tomb number 67 now, following that original system.
Okay, so let's really dig into these Saite tombs. A time of, splendor, before the Greek influence.
Yeah, 655-25 BC, a period of real prosperity. The tombs reflect that. Typically, they're underground.
Subterranean. How did you get in?
Through a shaft, usually about 4 meters deep. This shaft leads down to a kind of central area, a distributor.
And chambers leading off that.
Exactly. Up to 7 chambers branching off. But the part above ground, the chapel for offerings, that hasn't survived in the areas they've looked at so far.
But they did introduce something pretty significant architecturally down there, didn't they?
They certainly did. Stone barrel vaults. This is really where you see them introduced in Egyptian tomb construction.
Stone barrel vaults.
Yeah.
Like curved ceilings made of stone blocks.
Precisely. And what's amazing is some of these vaults are over 2,400 years old, and they're still standing, completely unrestored.
That's incredible durability. A real innovation.
It really was. It suggests, advancements in technique, maybe better access to stone or resources, allowed for more complex, lasting structures.
Now, one tomb really stood out, Herod's tomb. He was a priest.
Yes, Herod's tomb is special because it's the only one found so far from this period there that has decoration inside the chamber.
What kind of decoration?
Inscriptions about his life in Permejed, his priesthood for different gods, and the ceiling. It depicted the night sky.
Oh, wow. How did they do that?
With a beautiful blue paint and 5-pointed gold stars, really evocative.
And his sarcophagus was found too.
It was, although looted. The lid was open, not much left inside, but the sarcophagus itself still had details. The wig, the beard, a collar, a winged goddess, hieroglyphic texts. Quite elaborate.
But it wasn't all elaborate tombs like Herod's, right? There were simpler ones too.
Yes, definitely. They also found a more basic type, just a shaft entrance leading straight to a single vaulted chamber.
I'm still using those same big stone blocks, though.
Interestingly, yes, even the simpler ones use those distinctive meter-long blocks, consistency in the materials at least.
And then there was that really unusual one, 3 chambers side by side.
Ah, yes, that was unique. 3 chambers arranged horizontally.
Different layout entirely. What'd they find there?
Sadly, nothing. Robbers had smashed through the roof to get in. The original doorway was found blocked up with stones, but empty.
A shame. Then Tomb 13, discovered in 99. That had a strange shape.
It did, a star shape. Also looted, unfortunately. But inside, they found a sarcophagus. Plain, no inscriptions, but very finely made.
And some odd burial evidence, too.
Yeah, in one chamber, signs of a later reburial, an inhumation, so not mummified. And then, tucked in a corner of the sarcophagus itself, were partial remains of someone who had been mummified. Bit of a puzzle.
Okay, now on to the Great Tomb. This sounds like a major undertaking.
It certainly was. They started excavating in 2000. A Juradar survey had hinted at something big, stone-built, possibly with contents.
And the digging was intense.
Extremely. They had to go down through 7 meters of sediment just to reach the top of it.
7 meters? Wow, and what did they find first?
Those meter-long stone blocks again, which initially made them think, oh no, it's been totally dismantled and looted.
But then things changed.
Yes, as they went deeper, sarcophagus lids and troughs started turning up, but strangely, they often didn't match. Lids without troughs, troughs without lids.
Odd. Any decoration on them?
Some had painted hieroglyphs, but they were incredibly fragile. Apparently, they just faded almost instantly when exposed to the sunlight and air. Heartbreaking, really.
So what's the overall picture of this Great Tomb? How big is it?
Well, they found the southern, western, and part of the eastern limits. The northern side seems destroyed. But even so, it has 11 chambers found so far.
11. That makes it the biggest Saite tomb found there.
By far, yes. And inside, a real variety of sarcophagi.
Like what?
Anthropoid ones, human-shaped, decorated examples. Some were even found still closed. But again, also lots of mismatched lids and troughs.
And you mentioned some chambers might have been for rituals, not just burial.
That's right. In a couple of chambers, they found features like an altar and a whole cache of figurines. It suggests spaces specifically set aside for maybe offering rituals for the deceased, separate from where the bodies were placed.
Fascinating. But the most exciting part of the Great Tomb complex must have been that intact chamber.
Oh, absolutely. Finding anything intact from this period is rare. It was a vaulted chamber, and the entrance was perfectly blocked except for one missing stone block at the top.
Like a little window left open. What was inside?
An incredible find. 8 canopic jars.
8. Not the usual 4.
Exactly. Very unusual. 4 were inscribed for a woman, Tador. The other 4 for a man, Payden, her son.
So 2 sets of jars for the organs removed during mummification.
Yes. The lungs, liver, stomach, intestines. Each set of 4 would hold those, preserved for the afterlife. These jars had decorated lids, probably the sons of Horus heads.
Were the bodies of Tador and Payton there too?
Well, they found some human remains nearby, but they were poorly preserved. It wasn't immediately clear if they represented 2 people or how they related directly to the jars.
But there was another really significant find right near this chamber.
Yes, right in front of the entrance to Tador and Payton's jar chamber, they found a sarcophagus, and it's considered one of the most beautiful from the site.
What made it so special?
It had detailed hieroglyphs carved on the sides, and even traces of original color polychromy on the eyes and forehead of the face.
Amazing. Was it intact?
No, looted unfortunately. But inside, they still found a tiny gold leaf amulet and a heart scarab.
A heart scarab. That's a classic Egyptian find, meant to protect the heart.
Yes, the heart was crucial, the seat of intelligence. The scarab had spells to help it pass judgment in the afterlife. And its position, right by the chamber with the jars, strongly suggests a link between this sarcophagus and Tador and Payton.
Were there other interesting finds scattered around this general area of the necropolis?
Yeah, a bit north of the Great Tomb, they found an open sarcophagus. Inside was just a collection of bronze objects.
Bronze. What sort of things?
A plate showing Osiris, some small Osiris figures, part of an ibis figure that's linked to Thoth and in Uraeus.
Cobra crown symbol.
That's the one, a symbol of royalty and protection. But this collection wasn't clearly inside a tomb structure, more like a deposit, and they've also found hypogea nearby.
Rock-cut tombs.
Exactly. Underground chambers carved directly into the rock, so different styles of burial happening.
Now, I know the team also went back to look at areas the Antiquity Service had dug decades earlier. Why do that?
Well, around 4 years ago they started this. Often the documentation from those older digs, back in the 80s, it's pretty limited. So re-excavating helps understand the context better.
And maybe find things that were missed.
That's always the hope. It has happened before, where careful cleaning turns up overlooked items, even mummies sometimes.
So what did this re-excavation reveal?
Well, they found the usual layering, Byzantine funerary houses on top. Below those, a Roman tomb.
Which suggests
That maybe, just maybe, there was a Saite tomb even deeper down, beneath the Roman one. It fits the pattern. They were also checking reports from the Antiquity Service about a potentially intact tomb found back then.
Did they find it? The one from the report?
They did. They located the vault and the specific stone block that had supposedly been moved to get inside.
So it had been entered before?
Yes. It wasn't intact anymore, sadly. Looted of artifacts. But finding the structure itself was still important.
Why? What did it show?
It confirmed the construction style. A simple single chamber, but it had these niches on the side.
Niches? For what?
Almost certainly for canopic jars and maybe those Tassokar Osiris figures, composite funerary gods. Architecturally, it was actually very well preserved, the pavement, the vault, just empty of the original contents.
Did the old records mention any finds from the 80s dig?
Just a scarab and some of those Tassokar Osiris figures, limited, as I said.
Okay, then in 2019, the mission opened up a completely new sector. What emerged there?
Again, the typical layers, Byzantine on top, Roman below. Older tombs deeper still, which Dr. Mascourt will cover later. But the surprise here was finding stone tombs, similar to the Saite ones.
But different.
Yeah, smaller blocks, only about 40 centimeters long, not the big meter-long ones, and they were packed together really tightly.
A dense area of burials, then.
Very dense. They found examples like a Byzantine collective crypt, with multiple bodies just laid in right on top of a simpler Roman tomb. And there were loose sarcophagus bits scattered around, hinting the Saite level was deeper still.
And they found a specific Saite tomb there, Tomb 53.
Yes, Tomb 53, single chamber, Saite style, but looted and damaged. It had a stone anthropoid sarcophagus, but the lid was pushed aside.
Niches again?
Niches were there, yes, but empty. Looters got everything. The sarcophagus itself had even been shoved out of place.
But even in a looted tomb, sometimes you find things in the debris.
Absolutely, and they did here. While sifting, they found thousands of tiny beads.
Thousands? What kind?
Tubular ones, round ones, different colors, blue, blue-green, yellow, reddish. They were clearly from a bead net.
A net made of beads that covered the mummy.
Exactly. It was a common thing in this period, sometimes even formed images of gods. Here, just the loose beads remain, but loads of them. They also found the skeleton of a woman, poorly preserved.
And even with her poor preservation, they found something special.
They did. A small amulet shaped like a headrest. It's unusual to find these because the resins and oils used in mummification often, char everything over time. Finding delicate things like that is rare.
Which brings us finally to the truly intact tomb. This must have been just
Well,
incredible.
it really was the definition of a eureka moment. They thought it was just a large stone at first. But no, it was the sealed entrance of a tomb, untouched.
For how long?
About 2,500 years, completely sealed.
Wow. Was it hard to get into?
Very. It was wedged near other big blocks, very little space to work, and they were cautious, about the air quality inside after so long.
Had to ventilate it slowly.
Yes, opened it very gradually. The anticipation was immense. All the inspectors, regional authorities, everyone was there for the opening.
And inside, what did this textbook Saite tomb look like?
It really was textbook. Niches on both sides, just where you'd expect them for canopic jars. They even found the rotten remains of wooden boxes the jars must have sat in.
Oriented correctly.
Seemed to be, towards the cardinal directions linked to the protective deities on the jar lids. And in the center, the sarcophagus.
Did it have any strange features?
A couple of things. Weird traces of cartonnage on the outside. Cartonnage is usually for mummy cases, that plaster-stiffened linen. Finding it on a stone sarcophagus exterior was odd.
And something else.
Yeah, a dead scorpion, just sitting on the sarcophagus. Deliberately placed there, it looked like. Maybe as some kind of a magical guardian.
A scorpion guard. What about the canopic jars in this tomb? Were they high quality like Tador's?
Actually, no. Surprisingly, they were much cruder than Tagoran Paydens, and there was a funny mistake.
A mistake.
One of the lids must have been dropped or misplaced, and whoever put it back on two of the jars got them mixed up. Put the wrong deity head on the wrong jar, clearly couldn't read the hieroglyphs telling them which was which.
Huh. Even in ancient Egypt. Did the jars have inscriptions?
They did, yes. Drawn on, not deeply carved. They gave the owner's name Menin, or maybe Ninnu. The pronunciation's a bit uncertain.
And the organs were still inside.
Yes. Still mummified inside the correct jars. Lungs with Happy the baboon, liver with Imsidi the human, stomach with Duamutef the jackal, intestines with Kebesenef the falcon, all present and accounted for.
Amazing preservation. What else was in the chamber?
Behind the sarcophagus, several Tassokar Osiris figures. Mostly plain, but one was interesting. It had been broken and actually repaired in antiquity before being placed in the tomb.
Repaired and still used. Interesting. What about the sarcophagus itself? And the mummy?
The sarcophagus was, well, fairly simple, anthropoid, but the features were kind of crude compared to some others. The mummy inside, sadly, was in bad shape.
Why?
The rising water table, mainly. Since the Aswan Dam was built, groundwater levels have risen, and it just wreaks havoc on organic materials like mummies.
So what could they tell?
Could see the black resin coating, fragments of the bead net. The body was laid out in that classic Osirian pose, limbs straight, like the god Osiris. Looked quite burned because of the resins.
Could they identify the organs inside?
They could make out remains of lungs, stomach, liver, intestines. The brain would have been removed, kidneys sometimes are, but the heart. The heart was meant to stay.
And the heart scarab?
Not just one. They found two inside the chest cavity. A big one and a smaller one, both really nicely detailed. That was exceptional.
2 heart scarabs. And any other amulets?
Oh, yes. Near the neck, a fantastic headrest amulet. Made of a red stone, the photos make it look brighter and shaped like a uraeus, the cobra.
And more in the wrappings.
Loads of them, recovered as they carefully excavated the mummy, which had to be done in situ because the stone sarcophagus was too heavy to move. They found djed pillars for stability, little papyrus roll amulets for rejuvenation, wedjat eyes for protection, tiny figures of gods in wood and minerals. Couldn't map their exact original positions, though.
But overall, it was a complete picture of a Saite burial.
Absolutely. It had all the key elements. The stone sarcophagus, the resin and bead net covering, amulets in the wrappings, the heart scarab inside, canopic jars outside, Tassokar Osiris figures nearby. A perfect snapshot.
It's just incredible work.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of support to make it happen.
It really does. The University of Barcelona mission relies heavily on support from the Egyptian Ministry of Culture, the Institute of Ancient Near East, the Palarch Foundation, the Catalan Society of Egyptology, and AA Archaeological Services. Their backing is crucial.
And the discoveries aren't stopping.
Not at all. Especially in the last year or two, there have been many more surprises, going beyond even the Saite and Roman periods. But those are stories for Dr. Mascourt to share in a future presentation.
We did get some extra details clarifying points from the original presentation, which are really helpful, like how they actually built these tombs.
Yes. It seems they built the underground structure, first the chambers, maybe put some sarcophagi inside, then before adding the heavy stone barrel vault roof.
Ah, so the big sarcophagi had to go in before the lid went on, so to speak.
Exactly. You couldn't maneuver those massive stone boxes in afterwards. They were probably planned, maybe for whole families. And the stone itself, the white limestone blocks,
Where'd that come from?
mostly from a quarry near Minya, about 100 kilometers away. Decent stone, but not the super high-quality stuff from Tura, near Cairo. They also used poorer quality local stone for some of the simpler sarcophagi.
And the excavations themselves, they're not year-round, are they?
No, typically it's an intensive campaign, maybe 1 to 1.5 months per year. Depends on funding, team availability. Then comes all the study, analysis, writing, publishing back home.
And the looting.
Yeah.
It wasn't just modern grave robbers.
No, sadly. Looting happened at different times. Even back in the pharaonic era, sometimes tombs were reused or plundered. Then again in the Byzantine period. And of course, modern looting for the antiquities market, which is actually how the high necropolis was first really noticed in the 80s.
And just to be clear, the Saite period, 26th dynasty, the capital was up north in Sais.
That's right, in the Delta. But this was a period that affected all of Egypt. Oxyrhynchus was an important southern center during that time, but the Saite culture wasn't exclusive to it.
And those beadnets you mentioned, blue, was important.
Very. Blue faience beads were common. Faience is that glazed ceramic material. Blue connects to the night sky, the goddess nut, rebirth. The nets themselves are shown in temple reliefs like garments. They offered protection, preservation, maybe helped the deceased look like the resurrected Osiris.
And the quality of the stone for sarcophagi really varied.
It did. Some, like in tombs 1 and 14, were fine granite. Others, especially smaller or simpler ones, used that lower grade local stone we mentioned, dependent on wealth and status, presumably.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just been a fascinating journey through these Safite tombs at Oxyrhynchus, tracing the city's evolution, getting these incredible insights into burial practices.
Absolutely. And those little moments, those aha moments really stick with you, don't they? Finding that completely intact tomb,
Oh, yeah.
the story of the mixed up canopic lids,
Almost comical.
and just the detail of the amulets, the bead nets, it makes the past feel so much more real, so tangible.
And it really drives home how important Oxyrhynchus was for so long. Trade, politics, religion. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? With all these layers already found, what other secrets are still down there under the sand? And how will the next discovery maybe change how we see ancient Egypt all over again?